What is going on, everybody? It's Brendan Abbott coming to you with the KBR Sports Podcast. You already know, the best sports podcast of your 24-hour day. It's a pleasure to bring the podcast to you guys once again, especially with all the new breaking news we got to discuss for the podcast. But as you guys already know, make sure you guys subscribe to the KBR Sports Podcast. Go ahead and make sure you do it right now. Go click that subscribe button. Don't forget to do it. I'm letting you know right now, so I better see the subscriber count go up off after this podcast episode, since I know you guys are going to be subscribing, especially all the new listeners and those who are tuning into the podcast for the first time. Appreciate you guys joining us for the KBR Sports Podcast. And I wanted to make sure I was just touching on all these guys, because in regards to just a lot of what's going on in both leagues in regards to the NBA, MLB, NFL, and everything, there's so much to talk about. But obviously, everybody has the main things of always what they want to hear about. Because, I could talk about the NBA and talk about CJ McCollum dropping over 30 points or so in the fourth quarter in the game, or 23 points or so in the fourth quarter of the Portland Trailblazers game against the Clippers, which he was amazing in, by the way. He only missed one shot and one free throw in that game. But I think the news that a lot of people want to hear about is pretty much all the NFL news we got going on. Because right now, we have the news about Odell Beckham Jr. having been traded to the Cleveland Browns. And it's probably the biggest news that we have right now going around in the circuit, because Odell, a lot of little rumors are going around that Odell was going to be traded and that the Giants were shopping him. You heard teams like the Patriots, the 49ers, the Browns, and others were interested, the Rams, and other teams are interested. And so it was only a matter of time kind of thing that we were all sitting there waiting to see what was going to happen with the Odell Beckham Jr. saga, because pretty much publicly said last year that, because he just signed his current contract last August. He really just signed it, and it was weird because from the standpoint of him being traded, the general manager was essentially saying, we didn't sign him to trade him. Fast forward almost a year later, and they trade him. And it's a interesting situation where you see he gets traded, and he hasn't been healthy for the most part because of the fact that he's dealt with ankle injuries and everything. And it's funny when you see what the package is of what the Giants traded him for, because a lot of people feel as though they could have possibly gotten more for him. And essentially what they traded, or what the Giants will receive, is a first-round pick in 2019, which is going to be the number 17 overall pick. And they're also going to get the Browns' second, third-round pick this year, as well as Jabril Peppers. And then the Browns get Odell Beckham Jr. Now, for the Giants, it's a move where you realize they're essentially just selling out, saying that, or maybe they're just giving up on the fact that they don't feel as though the future with Odell Beckham Jr., or they just want a fresh start in regards to the talent that they have on that roster, even though for a lot of what we saw from Eli Manning, his top production came in line with Odell Beckham Jr.'s ascension. When Odell Beckham Jr. got drafted, that was the season following Eli Manning's one of his worst years he's ever played in the NFL. And the next season he gets drafted, Eli Manning all of a sudden has a resurgence in the NFL. Is that a coincidence? I don't think so. And so when I'm looking at what Odell Beckham brings to the table, especially for a young guy like Baker Mayfield, who already has a weapon in David Njoku, Jarvis Landry, Nick Chubb, and so on, that this offense is going to be looking so good next year. At least that's what the hope is, because we've seen instances where we saw a team formulate offensive conglomerate or offensive coalition that we're like, okay, these guys are going to be the next big thing next year. They're going to be unstoppable, and it all just doesn't end up gelling well. And so what we got to see from this team is to see how Odell Beckham fits in, how Odell Beckham's going to be able to play. Because last year, Odell Beckham was really only able to play in 12 games last year. Obviously, he was dealing with a lot of the ankle stuff, and he wasn't fully healthy all throughout the year. And the year before that, he only played in 4 games and started 2. So you realize that sometimes it's been a little bit of an issue with him in regards to health. But in regards to when he's fully healthy, the dude puts up numbers with the best of them. And I'm talking Antonio Brown, I'm talking Julio Jones, I'm talking DeAndre Hopkins, all those guys. When Odell Beckham Jr. is fully healthy, he's at the top of the class in terms of wide receiver and who you'd want to take on your team. he might be one of the top guys that you would take on your team at that position because of how young he is and just how talented and versatile he is as a player. And now imagine you're pairing him with Baker Mayfield and the other guys I listed earlier. And this is a Baker Mayfield who's only going to get better from his last season. Because when we're looking at Baker Mayfield's last year, he threw for 27 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, had a 63.8 completion percentage, and he had a 55.7 QBR and a 93.7 passer rating. And the Browns were essentially a game and a half or so away from making the playoffs. They had to win their last game against the Ravens to even be in that position. And they lost that game against the Ravens, which a lot of people feel as though was a tough break for them because the refs blew the whistle prematurely, and everybody knows the story in regards to that. But if we're talking about this team moving forward now, you see that they've amassed the talent. All those years of having bad records, all that stuff, seems like it's coming to roost for them now. Because you already have on your defense a guy like Myles Garrett, who I believe was 6th in sacks last year, which was amazing because I think he had about 13.5 sacks, which is really impressive. And you're looking at different acquisitions these guys have made, and you're wondering they're going to bring in a guy like an Earl Thomas and so on to kind of add on to that back end of the defense since their offense is so stacked now. Because last season, the Browns offense, when we're looking at it in terms of yardage, they were 13th in yards. Not bad, about league average, and it's definitely hopefully going to jump now that you have an Odell Beckham Jr. in the fold, because even in terms of points, the points that they scored last year, the Browns were below average. They were 20th. So you see that there's so much room for them to grow there, but now they have that big guy, that big play receiver, that deep threat who's pretty much always open, who can create open zones for himself, knows how to always make sure he's available for a quarterback, especially a guy like Baker Mayfield, who sometimes knows how to extend a play and create on the fly for his quarterbacks and help them out, especially when it was a guy like Eli Manning or whatever the case may be. And so I know I see a lot of people talking about, the Browns are not going to be the AFC North champions, 10-6, and so on, because you got to think about it. It is interesting when you see it and you realize that teams like the Steelers took a step back in regards to Antonio Brown going to the Oakland Raiders, getting traded there. And you see a guy now, Le'Veon Bell. I'm going to touch on him in a second. He's no longer with the Steelers. The Ravens, they've lost a couple of pieces from their core. And then the Bengals, just the Bengals. I mean, the Bengals, that's all I can really say about them. They're really just the Bengals. They're not that great, and they've been a pretty bad team. So when you're sitting back and thinking about it, you got to realize, hey, these dudes do have a realistic chance of making it to the playoffs. They were that close last year, and now you're adding a dynamic player of the caliber of Odell Beckham Jr.? That's ridiculous. I'm so excited to watch the Browns play, and I know it's one of those things that I feel as though personalities just mesh. I think that Baker I'm an Oklahoma fan personally, Oklahoma college and everything, and I have watched Baker all throughout his career. And regardless of all the stuff that he had to deal with in college in regards to like the police video and different things people criticize him for, Baker has just always had that gamer mentality. And when I say that, I mean in terms of he's just a competitor. He loves to win. He loves to uplift his teammates, and he has that competitive edge to him where you can tell losing is the last thing he wants to do. Losing is like he'll do whatever it takes so he doesn't have to feel the pain of losing a game. That's the feel you get from Baker Mayfield. And guys in the locker room feed off of that. You saw the difference in the Browns culture. Regardless, we saw the Hard Knocks, how bad the Browns culture was. We saw it. Hugh Jackson is literally competing with Todd Haley for who is more in control, whose franchise is it, like, all those little things, whose offense is it, all those things, the pride jostling that was going on in that franchise. And those things you saw after Hugh Jackson and that whole regime got let go, Baker Mayfield was really flourishing in that Browns offense and was able to actually make plays, able to lead the Browns to what was almost a playoff berth and what has been their best record in over a decade. And so I watch Baker Mayfield, and you see him and you pair him with a guy like Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham Jr., Nick Chubb, and David Njoku, and those guys are going to want to follow his lead. And you see guys like Jarvis last year speaking up on behalf of Baker about how great of a teammate he is. And you see that those kind of things, they don't go unnoticed, especially for a young guy that comes into a team and is able to lead a team of veterans. Because sometimes when a young quarterback comes in, it's hard to lead right away. It's hard to be that guy because who are you to know? You haven't been in the league. You haven't done whatever the job entails. You haven't proven anything yet. You're the number one pick, yeah, but you haven't shown what your steal is in this league. And so those are things that you have to prove to yourself and still be able to take or prove to those guys and still be able to take a leadership role to be able to lead them as the quarterback. And Baker Mayfield is able to do that, which he deserves kudos for. Because I know a lot of guys tend to struggle and another guy ends up being the leader of the team or assumes that role, whatever the case may be. And you hear it all the time. It's not always the quarterback that's the leader. It might be another guy that's the rah-rah guy in the locker room, and the quarterback's more so the guy that just kind of chills back in the background. Not that he doesn't lead, but just not to the extent that you might get from the sense of a Tom Brady, a Peyton Manning, and so on. So it's going to be exciting to watch this Cleveland Browns team. You're definitely going to be hearing in the next few days about Odell Beckham Jr. possibly getting a restructuring of his contract just because he wants to reformulate the guaranteed money in the contract. It's kind of like how Antonio Brown had his. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes for Odell, to see if he gets paid more than Antonio and everything, because it's not really going to affect the Browns' pay or what they already had in terms of free money to give out to free agents, since they already had his contract and salary allotted for on the books. It's just that it would be guaranteed money now. So that would be a big difference. And a lot of guys are all about the guarantees. And that's essentially what the big poignant part of a lot of what is going on now. Now he's going to be negotiating in regards to his contract. And transitioning from that, before I actually touch on, guys, let me touch on my friends at Fanatics. Fanatics is obviously going to be the leading brand in apparel and everything in terms of memorabilia after all these guys have switched their teams. Now we have Le'Veon going to the New York Jets. We have Antonio Brown going to the Oakland Raiders. We have Odell Beckham Jr. going to the Cleveland Browns. The first thing everybody's going to want to do from these fan bases is get their new guys' jerseys. So, guys, why not go to the best place to do that and go to fanatics.com? And while you're at it, make sure you're getting the best pricing available. Why pay full pricing when you can get a lowered rate on whatever items it is you're looking to get? I know whenever I'm going to buy something, I want it at a cheaper price. Shoot, I was telling my girlfriend the other day, she wanted to go out and get some food, and I'm telling her, girl, look for some deals. Why are we going to go pay for full price stuff when we can go get the deals? I can get the same food at a lower price point. Now, doesn't that seem way more worth it? Y'all might call me frugal, but I just call myself wise. And I feel that's the same method and the same approach I have with my sports gear. I'm always going to try and get my stuff at the best prices. So, guys, make sure you give a call to 954-507-6928 in order to get the best pricing on whatever new sports gear you're looking to pick up for whatever team you're interested in. All right, guys, so I want to jump into the next part of the podcast I wanted to talk about, and talking about the guy that was the headliner of free agency, the one that we all been waiting for. Everybody was waiting to see what was going to happen with them, and it felt like it took forever, but we finally got the resolution of the Le'Veon Bell saga, in which Le'Veon Bell is going to be signing with the New York Jets, and he's going to be signing a 4-year contract worth $52.5 million with the Jets. And in terms of total value of max value, it's $61 million and includes $35 million in guaranteed. So for a lot of people, I know there's going to be two sets of reaction here, maybe even three. So one set of reactions is going to be the fact that people are going to criticize, because technically in terms of per year money that Le'Veon Bell got, he gave up $14.5 million, and he sacrificed that for a year and only ended up with $35 million guaranteed. And so he could have got the $14.5 million guaranteed and still gotten the $35 million possibly. Now that's possibly, because you never know in terms of injury what could have happened to him. But he took, if you're talking about per year basis, he took a pay cut. He did take a pay cut in terms of per year basis. But like I said in the last segment, for these guys, it's not the Steelers and all these other organizations can throw out the big contract. Oh yeah, we're going to give AB a 4-year, 5-year, $70-something million contract. Great max value. If he hits all the qualifiers to get the full money required for that contract, great. But how much is guaranteed? That's what all the players want to know. All the money sounds great. All of it sounds awesome. But how much is guaranteed? Now, this is where the other section of people I was talking about are coming from, where they're going to say, well, hey, Le'Veon Bell might have taken a year off, and he might have, yes, given up $14.5 million, which he won't recoup back. And obviously, for what we're seeing, it seemed like it was more of a depressed market where there weren't as many suitors for him as he might have thought there would be. So the Jets offer was the main offer that was out there for him. And I think there was a report that he was trying to get other teams involved late to see if maybe there was something that could happen. And obviously the Jets would have to increase the offer and increase the money within the deal that they were offering him. But the offers just weren't there for him. So essentially he had to take what he could, and the Jets gave him a deadline and he had to acquiesce to that deadline. And so now you see that where the other section would be coming from is going to be saying, well, hey, he got the guaranteed money. Because even though people that are opposed to what Le'Veon did are going to say, well, he gave up $14.5 million. The other side of it can say, well, what if he would have got another knee injury? What if he would have gotten critically hurt? What if it would have been a career-ending injury? He doesn't have that $35 million guaranteed on the back end now. He just has that 1 year, $14.5 million. And for a lot of players, I mean, that's where we're moving towards for players. Players want to have the most guaranteed money in their contracts that they can get so that they go beyond, and they stretch it out for years instead of just having that 1 year pop. Okay, if you're signing contracts on a 1 year basis, your value can just go like that. Just like that. Alex Smith, you get stuck in a situation where you get a critical injury and it's almost career ending possibly, even for Alex Smith. And the amount of guaranteed money you have in your contract, the team can just cut you easily. Just easily cut you. And so it's one of those situations where you want to make sure you're taking care of yourself and your family on the back end. And for me personally, I might not like how Le'Veon went personally entirely about it. In terms of him sitting out a year, I understood it, but then at the same time, I feel like he should have played. But you can't talk to somebody about their money. That's one thing I think the common public seems to forget. Now, if you're a person that has ever negotiated your own contract and had to negotiate what you're worth, you understand this perspective. Or if you're a person that's ever worked on commission or any kind of thing like that, and maybe you had to keep track of what you were getting paid because people weren't maybe paying you right, or your money wasn't getting allocated the right way, you don't play around with somebody else's money. And so if a guy feels like he is not getting paid as much as his contemporaries out there, and he's just as good as any of them, why would you want to lace up and possibly get hurt and lose out on that money on the back end? Regardless if it's maybe a little pay cut in terms of per year what you could have made, that was just on the franchise tag. Because the Steelers deal only had about $15 million in total guarantees. That big number sounds great, but if you're telling me I only get the franchise tag essentially in guarantees, dude, keep it moving. Who would take that deal? Now, granted, Le'Veon Bell's not no saint. I'm not trying to make it sound like this guy is an angel, that it was like a signed, sealed, and delivered deal that you give him a huge contract and have him become a fixture of your team. Because obviously Le'Veon Bell has had issues with substance abuse, and he's had to miss games for the Steelers because of it, and he's had injury issues. But it's hard for me to debate the fact that when Le'Veon Bell suited up for the Pittsburgh Steelers, he was either the best player or one of the top three players on the team whenever he suited up. And Big Ben only because Big Ben is the quarterback and is more important because he is the quarterback. But literally there are numbers to prove that the team was essentially, the year that Le'Veon came back a few years ago, the team went on a winning streak with him there. James Conner did a great job carrying the load with Le'Veon out. But was it exactly the same? Was James Conner the same exact threat that Le'Veon Bell was? If you compare, you can compare stats all you want, saying, oh, James Conner put up these numbers and this and that, but it's all about consistency. And having the threat of that guy. You might have a guy that puts up numbers similar to Steph Curry, but when Steph Curry is on the court, there's no guy like Steph Curry in terms of what he does on the court. There's no guy like him in terms of the impact he makes on the court. Same thing goes for Le'Veon. Le'Veon, when he's on the football field, your defensive scheme changes. How you have to defend each and every single hole against that guy is different than how you have to do against James Conner. It just is. That guy is an all-pro caliber running back. James Conner is a Pro Bowl caliber running back. Know the difference. Know the difference. There's a big difference there between all-pro and Pro Bowl. And sometimes I think people get stuck on Pro Bowl running backs, and this guy's putting up Pro Bowl now. All-pro means you're better than every single other guy at that position. And it's on a consistent basis. And for the Jets, I mean, you get a player for your team in which you get a guy to actually help out Sam Darnold now. Because I'm not going to lie, I felt bad for Sam Darnold. I did feel bad for him. It felt like he was in an offense where he was the main fixture of everything. He was the source of everything. The whole offense was getting run through him. And you see it in terms of their scoring numbers. I mean, the Jets were 23rd in team scoring last year. That's just rough, man. Especially for a young rookie quarterback. He had so much of the weight of the offense put on his back. And that team literally couldn't muster any yardage. They were 29th in total yards. And you just saw so many of the struggles that team had to deal with because so much was put on the back of Sam Darnold, and you can only ask so much of your young running back. Your young quarterback. There's only so much you can ask of that guy. And at some point, you're either going to result in him because he doesn't have anybody to take the pressure off of him. He's going to either be forcing the issue too much, which does result in more interceptions and everything like that, or it could result in him getting hurt because he's always back there throwing the ball more and more and more. So now you have somebody to relieve that pressure off of Sam Darnold and to be that main pressure valve that can relieve some of that pressure from Sam Darnold on a day-to-day basis. Because the Jets last year, I mean, they were 26 in rushing. In terms of rushing yards as a team, they were 26. So obviously, there's a huge gap in terms of where they can grow from that. And it's just kind of funny because you see a guy like Odell leaves the New York Giants, a guy like Le'Veon comes into the New York Jets. And I think that in terms of where the two teams are now going to be going and where the Jets stand, obviously this isn't going to lift the Jets up beyond the Patriots. That's not what this deal is going to do. But what this deal will do is it gives Sam Darnold a consistent threat to take the pressure off of him, take the focus of the defense away from him, gives him a pass blocking running back that can help out when on different deep pass plays. He's a great blocking running back. He knows how to flow out of the backfield and be a great guy in the flat and everything. If Sam Darnold wants to create off of his own ability to extend plays, guess what? Le'Veon knows how to sit in the right pocket just so you can dump the ball off to him if you get in trouble and you're afraid you're going to have to take a hit, or he's your last option. You have nobody else down the field which is the situation that the Jets faced a lot last year because they just didn't have the weapons. And so it's going to be interesting to see how now everything works out in terms of how the Jets utilize Le'Veon Bell, similar to a degree of how the Steelers might have used him. But now you don't have that Steelers offensive line blocking for you in regards to Le'Veon. And it's going to be interesting to see how, I mean, not that the Jets, I'm not going to kind of cast aspersions on the offensive line. You have to see it before you believe it. And I got to see what their offense looks like before I can really make a full judgment in terms of, how Le'Veon going to perform behind that line and everything. Because you can't doubt the talent that Le'Veon is. The Steelers' offensive line is great. Don't get me wrong in terms of the holes they created for him and whatnot. But some of those holes that he created were so far on the backside of plays that you see him literally make a cut and go back all the way right. It was ridiculous. Some of the stuff that guy was able to do. A normal running back wouldn't do things like that. And some of those holes that were getting opened by the offensive line weren't by design. And it just so happened to be that way. And he would find a way to get into that hole. So you always just got to take appreciation of greatness, and I'm happy obviously both guys are hopefully going to be in situations that they wanted to be in, and that might lead to more winning in the future. But guys, it's going to wrap it up for the KBR Sports Podcast. Always, guys, I appreciate you all tuning into the KBR Sports Podcast. Remember to subscribe to the KBR Sports Podcast. Do not forget to do that. I appreciate you guys and all your support for the podcast. Make sure you guys also leave a comment, a review, a like, share the KBR Sports Podcast just to show your support and give me your thoughts on Le'Veon Bell. Give me your thoughts on Odell Beckham Jr. Let me know what you think. Do you think the Browns are now going to win the AFC North? Do you think they're a lock? What do you think? How do you think Le'Veon Bell is going to perform? Or do you think the reports are true in regards to his weight gain? And will he be able to perform at his same peak level after taking a year off? Let me know the answers and comments to all those questions in the comment section, guys. And always, like I always say, make sure you follow me on Twitter. You can always get into contact with me via my Twitter page and the KBR Sports Twitter page. So guys, I appreciate all the love, and guys, hopefully you have a great rest of your day. I'm out.